Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Max Wolpoff has saved the USA's life in this World Cup.
Paul, the runner, loose ball, it's good! Gonzaga, the slipper still fits! To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight and the Mets win it.
He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth!
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness! I'll see you Sunday. But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. And yeah, in case you can't tell, I don't have that much of a voice left. Welcome in to the cheap seats, Max Wolpoff with Keith Hoehne. Keith, I'm gonna need you to carry most of this show here because I'm still recovering from watching Game 4 live. That was easily one of the best crowds I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, Max, I was only lucky enough to check it out on TV, and I knew you were there, and I couldn't help but think throughout the entire game, especially that first period, man, I hope Max is doing okay right now.
Oh, I'm doing way more than okay. I mean, it was incredible. The scene in the streets afterward remains one of the top things. Like, I still remember vividly a couple days later now that it was just nuts. Like, people were chanting Caps in 5, Caps in 5. We want the cup. One more game, one more game. It was, I've never seen a crowd this energized before. And I even went to game 6 of the previous round against Tampa. I've never seen this crowd like this. Never seen this city so electric. It's finally okay to believe.
But the question is now, Max, were they running the trains, and how did you get home?
They were not running the trains, and I got home because I drove. Wow. That said, we're going to get to more of the Stanley Cup finals. We're going to get to the NBA finals, and whether or not a coach's challenge is coming to the NBA. We'll talk about that in a bit. But here on the cheap seats, we have to open with Dwight Clark and his legacy. He passed away a couple days ago, and you know something, Keith? I've only seen the replays, and I've seen his legacy through the lens of the past and through the lens of history. But living and experiencing his days in the NFL, he was an absolute legend.
He was. And as you talk about living through the lens of history, the one that always comes up is the catch, right? 1981 NFC playoffs there against the Dallas Cowboys. 49ers were down 27-21. And in the final minute, of course, we all know what happened. Dwight Clark reaches up for that 6-yard touchdown pass from Joe Montana, and the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. I'm not a 49ers fan. I was obviously not around in 1981, but I know who Dwight Clark was, and I know all about that catch. But, of course, I know and you know that his legacy extends so far beyond that, but obviously that's the one that has the lasting memory.
It's easy to have such a lasting memory like that when you have when you have that sort of one glory moment. It's very easy to remember somebody for just that. Clark was a lot more than just that. And for many years, he was fighting a very hard battle against a very tough disease in ALS, known colloquially as Lou Gehrig's disease. And this is a disease that's been in the national spotlight since Peter Frates and the Ice Bucket Challenge. And it's just another reminder that, man, my voice is shot. It's just another reminder that the diseases like this and things like this can affect anybody from any walk of life. And we have to remain vigilant in our efforts as a society to keep people healthy and to make sure that those who are suffering still remain happy and can live somewhat productive lives, even if it means some assistance from the rest of us.
Yeah, you said it. And especially, I think this has so much more of an impact, at least visually from the outside world, with something like this happening to someone who, to us seems invincible, right? These professional athletes and these guys that seem to be larger than life, these huge, dominating physical presence of a person that is, shut down at such a young age at 61 due to that. So I think that also helps add, a little bit more to us paying attention to this disease.
And hey, ALS is still taking donations. The Ice Bucket Challenge was a great start, but their mission is nowhere near done. Let's move off of Dwight Clark and move to something a little sadder within the active and still alive sports world. Serena Williams needed to pull out of the French Open because of an injury. She was scheduled to face Maria Sharapova, and just to see the devastation on her face during her press conference, oh boy, did she really want this. She really wanted this return story.
Oh yeah, and whenever you have an athlete that's unable to compete due to injury, it's always terrible to see. You never want to see that, especially in Serena Williams' case. She's won 23 Grand Slam singles titles, and she, at 36, she's still going strong. She obviously has the ability to go a whole lot longer, but on Saturday, she was, she felt that twinge, she felt that pain. Still tried and competed on Sunday in doubles, but just unable to get over that after putting some wraps around her muscles and everything. It just wasn't going to happen for her. And as you said, seeing the pain on her face after announcing that she was unable to move forward, that's really tough to see.
It's also really hard to see because if anyone was able to see the commercials for the French Open, Serena Williams and the return of the Queen was the entire story going in. It was Serena Williams. Is she going to be back? Is she going to be in top form? And basically the answer was, of course she is. I mean, this is easily one of the best tennis players, easily the best in the women's division, one of the best overall for certain. Her dominance over the division the last few years has just been the stuff of legends. She'll be remembered for sure. This is not her last hurrah, but it just sucks to go through everything of waiting for her to return, to see her against Sharapova in the fourth round, and we just have to miss it. We just have to wait a little longer.
Yeah, I think that makes it a little worse. After having to wait so long, obviously she had her baby, and she wasn't able to compete because of that. And that I think you touched on the main point right there. Just the waiting. If we saw her compete, so recently, it might not feel so bad. It might not have such a lasting memory, at least currently, for that. But just the waiting is so tough, and I'm an impatient person. So I don't like to wait.
Well, I can understand not wanting to wait. And speaking of not wanting to wait, we have a contract to get to in the NFL. And this is the NFL offseason, but this is a contract worth noting because of who signed it. The Bears re-signed tight end Zach Miller to a 1-year contract Now, that normally doesn't mean a whole lot here in the offseason when you assign a tight end to a one-year deal at very limited money. However, Zach Miller, you may remember the name, was the one who dislocated his leg trying to catch a ball just a couple years ago.
He almost lost it. He almost lost his leg. And they were playing against the Saints, and he went up for a catch. It looked like a very routine play, but came down. And I watched the replay just recently, and the way his leg just bends and turns. Legs are not meant to do that. But again, of course, it looked like it's dislocated, whatever. And then they have to rush him to the hospital, and it's, they have to do emergency surgery because it's then released that he almost lost his leg due to severe nerve damage and lack of blood flow to the leg. It's unbelievable, this story. And for him to be able to come back and for the Bears to bring him back to give him a contract, I think it's great. And I think it speaks so much to Zach Miller and his determination to get back on the field.
It's one of those, another thing with the NFL that you're never guaranteed anything. Super Bowl heroes are not guaranteed their next contract. No one is guaranteed much of anything in football. But to see someone like Miller get a second chance after a horrific injury to be able to come back and at least have a chance to prove himself is a rare moment in the NFL to see, where someone has another shot at life. Yeah.
And he's been one of the more consistent Chicago Bears players. Now, it's not saying a whole lot considering the state of the Bears over the past couple of years.
The last couple of years, that's not a high bar to clear.
Right. But I think that makes him all the more valuable, obviously, to be one of the most consistent performers for the Bears, obviously excluding this injury. So, hopefully he can come back from this and reward the Bears for giving him another contract and giving him another shot to get on the field and make a difference.
And especially with the Bears, they do have a young team. There's not a whole lot of pressure on him to come in and be a Super Bowl hero right away. That's just not even the discussion with the Bears right now. The Bears have a young team with a young quarterback. They have plenty of room to grow. And he just needs to find his legs. I'm sorry about that joke. I realized after I said it. Oh, boy.
Pun intended there, huh?
Yeah, no, I did not intend that at all. Man, I'm not having a good day. Whoa, okay. Lose my voice, make a joke about legs. Awesome, Max. You're doing a great job.
Moving on.
Yes, please. This is why I told you, Keith, that I'm going to need you to carry parts of this show.
All right. Well, that does it for the first segment. Coming back, we will talk about Max. I think you're going to have to carry the second segment of the show as we dive into the Stanley Cup Finals. As we just mentioned, you were there. Tell us about it when we return on the cheap seats. But first, don't forget to go to Facebook and check out our poll. Should NBA have coaches challenges? We're also going to touch on that later in the show. Coming back on the cheap seats.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we hang out and just talk movie and TV news and reviews, and it's awesome. A new show comes out every single Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Cinema Stories. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back, everyone. Way up here in the rafters, it is the Cheap Seats, and we are back talking about the Stanley Cup Finals. And who better than to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals than the guy who was at Game 4, Max. Max,
yeah.
What was Game 4 like, man?
Okay, Game 4 from warm-ups, not even puck drop, from warm-ups was going to be the craziest night in DC since Game 3. I felt that it was one of the, the house was packed. Normally with warm-ups, you see about maybe a quarter of the crowd file into the 100s of the arena, file into the lower bowl to just sort of watch, maybe get a chance at a free puck or two. But the place was packed. There was 80 to 90% of the crowd just milling around, waiting for waiting for the game to start 30 plus minutes before the game would actually start. People were ready for this. The city was ready for this. The traveling Vegas fans, they were ready for this. Everyone who came in, this being their first playoff game, this being their last playoff game, the Nationals players, Ryan Zimmerman and Max Scherzer, who hyped up the crowd, man, we were all ready for that. And then there was Bryce Harper sitting in a box in a Vegas Golden Knights jersey because, hey, that's his hometown. I will not ever fault someone for cheering for their hometown. But boy, to see the disappointment on his face was funny.
Yeah, I was going to have to mention that with Harper wearing the Vegas jersey. Of course, we all know he's from Vegas, so like you said, we can't blame him for rooting for his hometown. But that was still kind of funny, as these professional athletes, sometimes it's an unwritten rule that you have to adopt every other professional sports team in the city that you also play in. But it was nice seeing Harper kind of stand tall there. Last week, when we talked about Game 1, I look back and I think about, all right, we talked about how great the Golden Knights were after scoring 6 goals. But I think we completely failed to mention that also in that game, the Capitals scored 4. And you're not going to win many games if you're allowing 3+ goals in a game. And that's exactly what the Golden Knights have done. The Golden Knights have allowed 3 goals in Game 2, 3 in Game 3, and of course we all saw what happened on Monday night. 6 goals in Game 4. Max, looking back at Game 2 and 3 and rehashing what happened in Game 4, what are the Capitals doing to get this puck on the net against Vegas?
Well, they're not getting it on the net a whole lot. It took until the third period of Game 4 to actually hit 20 shots on goal. It was kind of weird to see Marc-Andre Fleury, who prior to this series, there were a couple of smart hockey people who were claiming to the rafters, this man is a lock for Conn Smythe. He's a lock for playoff MVP. He's not going to lose it to anybody. Don't even try. Whether Golden Knights win or lose, Fleury is your playoff MVP. The last couple games, he has not had a strong case because you can't keep stopping 95% of the shots you face at the National Hockey League level. That's just not sustainable. You can't keep doing that.
And looking forward to Game 5, this one is obviously going back to Vegas. And it's very obvious what the Vegas Golden Knights have to do. They have to win. Win and it's over. For Washington, hey, you're 1 game away. What do the Capitals have to do, Max, to close this out in Vegas, to not give them that glimpse of hope in Vegas returning to Washington for a possible Game 6? What do they have to do to close this out?
The same thing they've done for Game 1, 2, and 3. Play boring and play dirty. Vegas is a fast team. Vegas, throughout the whole season, no one has ever played them with hits after the whistle. No one's played them with, here's a little shot to the back of the knees. No one's played them with, here's a light shove. Here's a harder than necessary pull away from the goaltender. And at the end of Game 4, they got so frustrated that Derek Englund got himself kicked out, and there were a couple very unnecessary penalties resulting in some 5-on-3. Vegas is frustrated. The Capitals are living rent-free in their brains right now. And Vegas is a hard city to get any sort of lodging in. Washington has to play boring hockey. They have to play defense. They have to keep the gaps between defense and the offensive players for Vegas tight. They have to make sure they don't take another penalty because some penalties in that game were some garbage. And they just have to keep fighting dirty. They have to embrace the villain role that they're definitely going to have when they head into T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah, and you were mentioning it was getting chippy there in the third period. Hoehne took a shot. He got run on last night pretty late in the game. He took an unnecessary shot. What was the arena like after that one? After the game was seemingly over? It was 5-2 at that point?
Yeah, it was 5-2, and the crowd was firmly on the side of TJ Hoehne. I Hoehne chant, but I heard one that night. The crowd was firmly in the camp of their hero. And whether that's Vegas's villain does not matter to Washington. This is the closest the franchise has ever been. It's taken Alex Ovechkin 13 years of his career to get to this moment. It's taken his partnership with Backstrom 11 years. It took Barry Trotz, their head coach, the full 4 years of his contract to get here. You're not stopping this man. He is on a mission.
And to touch on that, since 2008, I believe the statistic is the Capitals in series clinching situations, 2008 to now, first 19 tries, 4 and 15. The last 6 tries, 5-1.
It's really incredible.
Yeah,
it's nuts, really.
All right. Well, we talked about the NHL and we talked about the finals. For that, moving forward, coming out of the break, we're going to talk about the NBA finals. The Cavs are down. They are in desperate need of a victory. Can Cleveland get a win against the Golden State Warriors to make it 2-1, or are they going to fall behind 3-0 and essentially ending it for them? We're going to come back on the cheap seats after this break, but before that, don't forget to go to our Facebook page and weigh in on our poll. Should the NBA have coaches challenges? They have it in the G League currently right now. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Is it good for the league? Is it not? We'll discuss that later on the cheap seats.
This is Nicole Kelly, host of Loud and Proud here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Loud and Proud, where we talk about issues facing the disability community. A new show comes out weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Loud and Proud. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
I feel glorious, glorious. Got a chance to start again. I was born for this, born for this. It's who I am, not put up again. I made it through the darkest part of the night.
Welcome back to the cheap seats, where the view is always great when you're there with a bunch of friends. Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff back for the cheap seats. Last segment, we discussed the NHL finals and how Max dealt with the insanity in Washington, D.C. Now moving to the basketball court, we discussed the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors, where the Warriors have a commanding 2-0 lead on the Cavaliers going into Game 3. Can the Cavaliers get one game against Golden State, or will they move ahead 3-0? Max, it looked like Cleveland was going to have that one game in game one, but they just let it go. And then in game two, Golden State took total control.
No, they didn't let it go. They dribbled it out.
Yeah. True.
Yep. I went there again.
Yeah, they drew.
Trust me. The memes of LeBron James's face are so hilarious. They actually were photoshopped a little bit onto some of the Vegas plays from last night, especially James Neal's miss on an open net. Like, to see other perplexed LeBron James, like, the net's open. What are you doing?
I was thinking exactly the same thing. I saw that rebound, and I said, all right, just put it back up. I guess this is it. And then he just dribbles it out. Like, what's going on right now? And you see everyone's reaction. The other camera angle just came out that was focused on the Cavaliers bench when, I'm not sure if you saw this, Max, LeBron looks up at Coach Tyronn Lue and he says, are we out of timeouts? Do we have no more timeouts? And obviously Lue, you can't see his face, but obviously he says, no, we have some left. And LeBron just puts his head in his hands like, my goodness gracious.
Okay. In defense of the head coach of the Cavaliers, Mr. Lue, I'm not talking about LeBron James and his actual role. No, Mr. Lue, he's probably anticipating the players know the score, the players know the situation. They'll be fine. I don't need to use this. And yeah, that didn't end up happening.
Yep. And so that was game one. Obviously, that was talk of it. That was game one. But we had a game two. But game two did not go any better for Cleveland. And I think you could tell they were definitely hungover from that game one blunder going into game two. Golden State seemingly had control from the very tip moving forward. Not that was a complete blowout, to start with, but you could tell that Golden State had all the momentum in their arena and they were going to take it.
And to see Steph Curry hit an NBA Finals record 9 3-pointers, this spells a lot of doom heading back to Cleveland. Granted, I will say that the Cleveland crowd at Quicken Loans Arena is one of the better crowds in the NBA when they have something to cheer about. So the Cavaliers to bring game 3 even closer to what game 1 was prior to the final seconds of the fourth quarter, they have to come out swinging. They have to come ready to play basketball, not to think about game 1, not to think about game 2, shuck those in the garbage, put them in the shredder, throw them in the fire, whatever metaphor you want to use here. Game 3 has to be, all right, we're down 2-0, but we can only win one game at a time. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and I always struggle with this with Cleveland. LeBron is obviously going to score a bunch of points, but does LeBron have to score 40-plus points for the Cavs to have a shot? He scored 51. They still lost in game 1, obviously. He only had 29. Only 29. He only had 29 in game 2. Does LeBron have to be more selfish in order for Cleveland to have a shot?
Well, okay. To take a page out of the football playbook, he can be as selfish as he wants and call his own number, but the Cavaliers can't be a one-dimensional offense, even if it means having someone go, say 0 for 10 from the field just to keep the defense guessing of who's going to shoot the ball. That is fine. That is an okay thing to have. But as a more direct answer to your question, Keith, yes, LeBron James does have to score 40-plus points for the Cavaliers to have a shot. He just does. There's just what supporting cast does he have? And through this whole playoffs, the storyline has been LeBron's doing it himself. LeBron's doing it himself. LeBron's doing it himself. Why should that change now? Who's going to step up for Cleveland? Who's the candidate to step up?
Right. Nobody's going to step up for that. I think the one candidate to step up for them would probably be Kevin Love, just because of the talent level that he brings. I honestly, I'm not trusting J.R. Smith. I'm not trusting Smith. Thompson, he's a fine player, but I'm not trusting anybody besides James. And going back to the 3-point shot for a second, of course, nowadays with the NBA, you live and you die by the three. And touching on what you said earlier with Steph Curry hitting his finals record, 9 3-pointers. He hit as many 3-pointers by himself as Cleveland hit as an entire team for 3-point shots total. James with 2, Love with 3, Hill with 3, and Smith with 1. 9 total for Cleveland.
Pathetic.
9 for Steph Curry.
That's a pathetic stat. That's pathetic.
Yeah, and 6 more points and 6 more 3-pointers beyond that after Seth. Kevin Durant, 2 for 3. West, 1 for 1. And of course Thompson, 3 for 8. So you had 6 more. You had 18 more points from behind the arc for Golden State. And what do they win by? They win by 19. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the game right there. Cleveland, they have to find their outside shot. And I think that's going to have to be LeBron James finding that outside shot for Cleveland, because I think that's the obvious answer.
Now, Keith, I know that we could ad nauseum talk about the NBA Finals, but there's something that could have a lasting impact on basketball brewing in the G League that I need to have an answer on. The Coaches Challenge. Now, in the G League, the rules as I have them written down in front of me are that you can only challenge fouls called, goaltending or basket interference, and out-of-bounds plays to see who touched the ball last, or if your foot actually went out of bounds, or if the ball went out of bounds. One of those 3 categories is all you can challenge. Keith, I am of the belief that basketball has way too many replays as it is, and in a game refereed by humans, I am willing to accept these things as errors.
I am to a certain extent. I would absolutely agree with you that the NBA has a tendency to drag on, definitely at the end of the game when you have all these replays. So am I begging for more replays from the NBA so these broadcasts and these games can drag on even longer? No, that's the last thing I'm asking for. However, if the game's already going on this long, am I against the idea of you taking a couple of extra minutes to really get the call right? I'm not against that at all. If you can do it in such a way where the rule is not abused, and I think they're doing that pretty well in the G League right now. Coaches get 1 challenge a game to do that. So if you're giving the opportunity of 2 challenges per game, it's going to take a couple of extra minutes. And if that's going to help in the long run of getting the call actually right, I'm all for it.
Now, I have a couple things. If the NBA is going to implement this, I would recommend you implement sort of like field hockey in the international sense, have a 4th official, a replay official, exclusively watching the monitor. That way, when the challenge flag is thrown, monitor's already out, someone's already looking at it, and you can get a decision just a little bit faster. Just have someone at the ready, because all right, we got to get the monitor. Now we got to get it's a 17-inch computer screen, basically, which is what I'm operating on to run this podcast. It's not very big. It's just there is not enough definition in a computer screen, basically, to watch this. I mean, it's better than what the NHL officials have with watching on a Tamagotchi, basically. The NHL replay is pathetic and weird, and we could talk ad nauseum, or I could talk ad nauseum about that, but that's not what we're here for. I am not in favor of the Coaches Challenge being implemented, but it seems like it's going to be. So it may as well be done right. Get someone to look at it, saves 30 seconds. Save everybody 30 seconds. Have a fourth official, have a replay official.
And I think that's the great idea that they have right now of doing it in the G League. They have the time to work out all the kinks at a lower level. They can analyze what has worked, what has not worked. So when it gets to that league level, probably next year, I'm guessing, that they can have all the kinks worked out and they can have a very effective, hopefully quick way of taking care of it down the road.
And I'm optimistic that the NBA can make the good decision and the right decision. It's just not sounding like it right now. It's just right now, I'm very puzzled as to why the coach's challenge would be necessary. There are replays enough in this sport.
Yeah, I think it forces you to look even further if a coach is willing to take the time and, burn one of his challenges to do that. Obviously not every play is replayed, but I agree with you that every close call is always replayed in the NBA, it seems. How long did they look at that in game one? Was it a charge? Was it a block against Kevin Durant? Yada, yada. That went on for what, 5 minutes maybe?
Keith, I didn't watch the game. I'm boycotting watching live basketball. They will not get my eyeballs.
Why are you boycotting it? Just because it's Cleveland and it's Golden State?
I am sick of this matchup. I feel like the NBA feels about as rigged as the WWE right now, and I am sick of it.
Awesome. All right, so let's go back a little bit for argument's sake. I haven't watched the WWE since The Rock was on it. Who is the Rock right now in the NBA? Who's the Rock equivalent in the NBA?
Oh gosh. So The Rock right now, okay, so The Rock, divisive fan base, people cheer for him, people boo for him, probably LeBron James.
I'm the biggest LeBron James fan ever then. I love The Rock. He was my guy.
Okay, all right. So now that I've made that comparison today.
Let's move on, but we can still stick on the hardwood for a second. Max, let's talk about a little bit more of a humorous situation moving forward, and what can in developments that we can have really at any time now. Brian Colangelo and his allegedly multiple Twitter accounts. What do you make out of all this?
I make that Brian Colangelo is a man of such power and such need for validation. I don't fathom why you need to have a burner account because someone dissed your collars or someone dissed your pickup on a basketball team. I don't get it. I just don't understand why you need this. Like, I'm confused by the whole situation. Like, I read the thing on The Ringer that this came out in, and I was more confused coming out of it than I was going into it.
What an incredible article, by the way.
It was so good. It was so good. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I fully recommend read the whole thing. Take your lunch break or something and just sit down and read how they parse this out. It's great. It's a fantastic piece.
It was something, and you can say whatever you want. Oh, maybe it was his wife. The proof that The Ringer brings to the table with this article and how it was brought up to Philadelphia, and how hours after The Ringer inquired about all these multiple Twitter accounts that they became deactivated or went from public to private. I don't think there's any chance that these were not Colangelo's Twitter accounts. And it's pretty humorous that we're talking about somebody having all these Twitter accounts. My question is, how do you have the time to do the job that you do at his level and run 5 Twitter accounts? I know that they were not all completely active. Some of them, it looked like they were just there to, spy and to catch up on other people in a non-obvious way. But I have a hard enough time. I do not have as important of a job as Colangelo does. I know that. And I have a hard enough job keeping up with my one Twitter account, much less 5.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I do not have that kind of time. But, man, why do people in power need to feel that whenever they say something negative, they have to say it anonymously? Like, what is this? Just say it. Just own it. Own that you're upset. Own that you're not happy. Own that you don't like this guy. Own it. Own your own opinions, please. It's more frustrating when stuff like this gets out and you're ashamed of your bad opinions. Just own it. And if you're ashamed of it, change your opinion.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's a crazy, crazy deal. And we'll see how things shape up moving forward with this. Moving forward, going to the football field for a quick second here, talking about Peyton Manning, and he is back in the news. Al Jazeera has come out and they claim that they have more proof that Peyton Manning was indeed using HGH. It hasn't gotten a ton of play after they recently came out with more information, apparently. Max, what do you think of this one?
Man, this was a story a couple years ago, it feels like. And honestly, it was poo-pooed a lot by the American sports media. It was very much shoved under the rug. And this was in the midst of Peyton Manning in one of his last seasons. And it's like, oh, we need to celebrate him, not tear him down. We have to build monuments now. We can't build a monument to tear it down. We have to build it to last. I'm puzzled by this. I think this warrants a further inquiry than what we have right now. I really think that this warrants just a better look than just having the lens of course he didn't do it. Why are we bothering to look at this? I really think right now, with some of the new stuff in the Al Jazeera piece, this has to be at least investigated.
I would agree. However, I don't think it's going to be because, as you said earlier, the American media, they really, they looked beyond it. They really didn't care. And that was when Peyton Manning was, this is going to sound harsh, that was when Peyton Manning was still relevant. Not that he is completely irrelevant now, because obviously Peyton Manning and the Manning name will always be relevant in the NBA. But that was back when, as you said, he was still playing. People were still talking about him. But now he's a citizen. He's kind of like a private citizen now, right? And people are looking to see what his next move is going to be. And his name is still very powerful, and people are offering him a lot of money, for his services just so they can put his name on things. I don't think this is going to move forward because I don't think anybody in the American media or sports world wants it to move forward. And the Peyton Manning camp said, we found no wrongdoing after an extensive NFL investigation. I would like to see how extensive the NFL investigation was into their arguably most popular player of all time, who is no longer going to be a player. I would love to see how extensive that was.
Yeah, I think the NFL as a whole investigating itself, man, I'm not so sold on the idea that they're going to do a good job.
Yeah, and I don't think they wanted to do a good job. I think that the NFL did exactly what the American media did with this, and they're like, you know what? Not now, not at this point in his career, not with Peyton Manning, not when he's been the golden boy forever. This is something that we're not going to pursue. I can definitely see everyone being on the same boat there and saying, you know what, we're just going to let this one go.
And hey, it's a pretty wild story, but I've got to tell you something. Are you ready for Wild Wednesday, Keith?
I'm ready for Wild Wednesday. I've been waiting to get to Wild Wednesday. This is my favorite point of the show. Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. All right. Well, Keith, let's go to break. We'll have this when we come back. Don't you worry. We'll have the craziest stories we can find. We do not tell each other prior to the show what our stories are, so we can have a natural reaction on air. We do it just for you, right here on Public House Media, right here on the Cheap Seats. And remember, we just had a debate about the Coaches Challenge earlier in this segment. Go to our Facebook page. Be sure to vote on whether you think the Coaches Challenge is a good idea. Let's come back from the break with Wild Wednesday.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good here on Public House Media. I just want to thank you for listening to the following broadcast brought to you by Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope that you'll come check out my show, How to Write Good, the writing show that is not about writing. A new show of How to Write Good comes out every Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of How to Write Good. Again, thanks for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Keith Hoehne, Max Wolpoff, and we have come to my favorite segment of the show for this Wednesday. It's Wild Wednesday, where we talk about the wildest sports story that we could come up with throughout the course of the week. However, before we get to that, don't forget to go to our Facebook page and check out our poll question. Should the NBA have a coaches challenge? Me and Max touched on that earlier in the show. Let us know your thoughts and what you think on that poll. Max, moving forward, it's Wild Wednesday. What do you have for us?
All right. So British football tends to be known as a crazy game. A lot of towns involved. But what if I told you that a team going into the bottom tier of Associated Football next year doesn't have a hometown? Now,
I would say that's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. This is a football team called #United.
#United. That's the name?
They are a football club based on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, they are based on the internet. They have formed an academy. They have played some charity matches, and they're going to host all of their matches in an online world, and they have fans online. Like, they're not going to have like a hometown that we cheer for, like fight for Old Essex or fight for Liverpool or Manchester or Tottenham or whatever. They're not going to have that. They have an online fan base that attracts thousands of people to every match that they have. And honestly, I can't really see a problem with this. This is the way we're going now.
But where do they play then?
They play, hang on as I figure out that they play their home games at Haringey Burrows, a 2,500 seat capacity stadium in Tottenham.
Well, it sounds like their home city is Tottenham then.
Okay, now they don't make any claim to Tottenham though. They make claim to the internet. And if you are on the internet, you can cheer for #United.
That is a brilliant marketing strategy, I think.
It's a brilliant way to say, hey, you're on the internet, we're the internet's team. We don't have a physical home, we have a digital home. Who else has a digital home? Everyone these days has a digital home. Come on down and support your digital soccer team.
Wow. And I might be asking too many questions here. How many fans do they get at their home games actually in Tottenham?
I don't have exactly where the article does not exactly have that from BBC, but they get about 600 to 700 for an average game. It can be in the thousands on viewership for a big game. They recently played a match against a celebrity comedians 11. So this is now they're at the bottom division of British football. They're starting from the bottom. And they're just a bunch of guys off the internet.
Wow. I love that. What if now here's an idea. What if they build their way up through the ranks and they become such a dominant power that they have to then talk about distribution rights?
Man, that would be amazing. Because okay. Nobody watches 10th division football unless you are in that town, you have a family member on the team, or you really just need something to laugh at. No one really watches 10th division football. And if you do, I'm sorry, no. Just do something better with your time. No. Now, with this, they could theoretically make the Premier League in 9 years. Granted, that's not entirely possible. I mean, they're not. I do think it would be interesting to see what the negotiations would be like for a team that is on the internet, hosted by a YouTube channel, to go up to the tiers of the world where you have television rights, because that's going to be a problem.
Yep. Hashtag United, the internet's team on exclusively NBC.
That would be amazing. I'm sorry. Just the sheer irony of the whole thing would be great.
Yeah. All right. That's a really good one, Max. I like that one a lot.
All right. Keith, what have you got today?
All right. Going back to the hardwood, it seems like we're always talking about the NBA recently, but hey, we're going to go back to the hardwood, and we're actually going to go back to the world of the internet. I'm talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder center, Steven Adams. He liked a comment that was featuring Thunder players. So this is what happened on Instagram. There was a post featuring Steven Adams, Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, and Paul George. And the caption was, "Who's more valuable to OKC?" And Adams liked a comment that said, "All of them except Melo." So basically, you have the Thunder center just completely trashing Carmelo Anthony here. And he blamed it, get this, Max, on fat fingers. He apparently, his whole excuse for liking this comment, saying that all these guys are valuable to Oklahoma City except Carmelo, his excuse for liking that comment is he's scrolling through the comments and his fat finger accidentally hits the like button.
Yeah, I don't buy that.
I don't buy that at all either.
Man, I just don't understand. Okay, I love how in the NBA, especially with how social media oriented the league is, I am all in favor of the chaos and the craziness that a like on a comment will generate. Look at the crazy world we live in. A comment like, not a post, not a tweet, but a comment. Are you kidding me? This is news now?
Yeah. And Adams, he apparently contacted Oklahoma City right away. He contacted the Thunder and he said, "Look, guys, I liked this comment. on Instagram. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make you aware of the situation before you got a firestorm coming your way from me liking the comment.
I applaud him for trying to get out in front of it, but I'm sorry, dude. You're not gonna protect your house in the middle of a storm with a piece of plywood. That's just not how it's gonna go.
Right. But one thing that I will come to his defense on, though, is that how often, at least back in the day, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're Facebook stalking someone, checking out their photos and everything. And how so aware are we of making sure that we don't hit a like or we don't keep our finger on that screen for long enough for it to activate anything so that person knows that we were that we were creeping on them? Like, I know we've all done it, and we've all tried to make really sure that we didn't hit a like or a comment or anything.
Keith, I'm sorry to tell you, I think you're alone in this boat.
Nope, I am not. Everybody on social media, that's half the reason on social media. Everybody's creeping on someone on social media at some point in time, and you want to make sure that you don't hit a like or a comment so that person doesn't know that you were looking at their stuff. I refuse to believe I am alone on that, Max.
All right. I'll back off and take your word for it because we're coming to the end of the show. But man, I tend to believe people are better than that. Just my optimism showing through.
I wish to believe that people are better than that, but obviously I know from time to time I am not better than that. So I refuse to believe I'm the worst person in the universe when it comes to stalking anybody else on Facebook. So
that's a satisfying conclusion. You're not the worst person in the universe. Would you like a cake?
Yes, I would, actually. Who doesn't want a cake? Who wouldn't like a cake that says, "Congratulations, you're not the worst person alive. Take a cake."
Someone who is allergic to any of the ingredients, and that's the only answer I can come up with.
All right, well then give them a different cake with different ingredients because everybody likes getting cake. And I think that is a great way to end this episode of the Cheap Seats for Wednesday. This has been Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff. Don't forget to check out our poll on Facebook, should the NBA have coaches challenges? And don't forget to check out the Friday edition of the Cheap Seats with Matt and Jake moving forward. For Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff, this has been the Cheap Seats brought to you by Public House Media.